Hi everyone, it's Mary. I have a little bit of time, which means that I'm trying to cram in the filming of my November wrap-up just because it's been such a long time. I mean, we're already in the middle of December, so I need to get going. So yeah, let's talk about the books that I read in the month of November. First of all, I want to mention a DNF because, okay, so I saw that on Netflix there was the Queen's Gambit that a lot of people seem to talk about, and that sounded appealing to me. And my husband as well, since we never agree on things to watch, he was like, I agree, okay, let's watch that one. But first I saw that there was a book. And I also saw that it was a very short one and that it was available on Kindle for 99 cents. So I was like, okay, let's read the book before the TV show because I love doing that. And I tried to read The Queen's Gambit by, I don't know the name of the author. I'm just gonna put the picture here of the book cover. And guys, so I read the first chapter and that's it. I think it was like 20 or 30 pages, and for the life of me, I cannot believe how high the ratings are for this book on Goodreads. I mean, seriously, I know, okay, I never heard anyone talk about this book on BookTube, not people that I'm subscribed to, but oh boy, it was terrible. I hated it. I don't even know where to start. It's not a spoiler because everything happens in the first 20 pages, as I said. I mean, what happens is the protagonist of the book is an 8-year-old. I don't even remember her name. But this 8-year-old, so in the first 3 pages, she becomes an orphan. No, I think it happens in the first page. Well, she's an orphan. In this 20 pages, she gets addicted to sleeping pills. She gets sexually harassed by one of her orphan buddies. And she starts playing chess and she becomes a genius. All these things in the first 20 pages of the book. So I get that the dude just wanted her to play chess, but really you should, the way in which it's portrayed, and I'm not even saying like, maybe it has a different arc throughout the story, it's explored, but the way I felt reading this book was just that he needed this girl to be sort of, to have like a troubled past and to have bad things happen to her to give her a little bit of an edge. And then she would just play chess and be this genius and so young and all that jazz. And I just felt it was terrible. I didn't like the writing style. This is an example of plot over, character that I'm not here for, not at all. It really put off the watching of the TV show as well. And I heard, I talked to a friend that actually watched the TV show and she actually felt the same things that I felt in this first chapter. So I didn't know. That one, I just wanted to briefly mention that one. Then I read a memoir, Filthy Beasts by Kirkland, Hamill, and I had asked for this book for review, but then I found also the audiobook. So being a memoir, I love listening to audiobooks, non-fiction audiobooks. And I thought I'd check this one. I'm not really sure why I asked for this book for review because when I heard the premise of the book, now that I was, getting myself into reading it, I was like, I'm not really sure this would be for me, really. And it wasn't, unfortunately. I gave this book 2 stars, and I feel so bad because, reading someone else's life and just be bitchy about it sounds wrong. And I try not to do that, but this is a memoir of Kirkland and how he grew up in a very rich family that sort of lost their fortune, and so they became poor, sort of. The memoir explores him coming of age, how he gets to terms with his sexuality, his relationship with his brothers, his father and his mother, who was he was living with his mother mainly, and how she was addicted to alcohol. It just felt like the poor, white rich boy, woe is me sort of memoir that I'm not really here for. Nobody in here was likable. I didn't like his writing style. He was, oh boy, I'm destroying this book. I didn't like the writing style. It was trying to be ironic, that's the sort of bitter irony that was not really working for me. I was engaged. I mean, it was engaging enough as a story. I was, mildly interested, I would say, but ultimately, I didn't feel like I could get inside his brain. I didn't feel like I could feel for him, that I could, feel empathy for him enough. Yes, even with the how he deals with how he came to terms with his own sexuality. Maybe it's not explored enough. It just didn't work for me. It was not terrible, but it was just not good. And now that I read the premise a little bit better, because I don't know what I had in mind when I asked for this book for review. I even think that I thought that Kirkland was a woman. I don't know how. But anyway, yes, I mean, I could, going back, I would not have picked up this book. So I wouldn't have to give this book this sort of review. So let's move on to another one, shall we? The only non-fiction book that I read this month, which was non-fiction November, so I tried my best to stick to non-fiction, even though I read quite a bit, quite a fair amount of non-fiction myself, but mainly is centered on education and parenting, so I tried to do something different here. But anyway, I read Breasts and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami. And this book is translated from the Japanese, I want to say it because I always forget, by Sam Bett and David Boyd, and I had a complicated relationship with this book. I just thought, trying to talk about this book really took me too long, so I just filmed a video review, which I don't know that if it's gonna be up before this video. And if it's up before this video, I'm gonna leave a link, or you can expect a video review because I already filmed it. So I just don't know how to, in which order to upload these videos. But anyway, so I'm not going in depth with this one because I did talk about it extensively in the review. But I give this book 3 stars. The first part of the book was amazing. The second chunk of the book was not amazing. And I think this should have been, I wish the author stuck to the first part of the book, and that was the book. And it would have, I would have given that book 5 stars. But unfortunately, she decided to write a second part. So what can you do? I still recommend this book because I think it has a lot of interesting themes discussed about women, about poverty in Japan, motherhood. So yeah, 3 stars for this one. Then I think I'm going roughly in the order, in the rating, how I rated them. Okay, so another book I gave 3 stars to is Another Day in the Death of America by Gary Younge. And I feel quite conflicted about giving this book 3 stars because I know that a lot of people, well, actually every people that I know gave this book maybe 5 stars or 4, mainly because of the topic of this book and how important it is. This book was written by Gary, who is a Black British journalist. He has an American wife, I believe, but he's lived in America for quite a long time and decided to write a book just picking a random day. In this case, it was the 23rd of November of 2013, and sort of see how many young children and teens lost their lives due to gun violence that day, during that 24 hours. And he sort of tracked all the information about all of these different young people and decided to write a book telling their stories, how they died, why possibly they died, and their backstory as well. So each chapter, I think there are 11 chapters here. Each chapter has the name of a different teenager. The youngest is 8 and the oldest is, I believe, 19. Just 10 boys. They happen to be all males. It's just, how that was. And mainly they are black. And there are a couple of Latinos as well. And this is not about racism, but racism plays a part in this as well. It doesn't really condemn anyone if not gun violence itself. And he explores how even inside, even in the families, even talking to the families, how they don't really blame the presence of guns for their children's deaths. They just blame maybe the environment or the situation, but they don't really take into consideration how dangerous it is to have guns around, and how this is a huge problem for the US. And to me, it's sort of outlandish because I live in Italy and we are so far removed from this sort of problem, but I still think that this one was very, again, as I said, I'm not questioning the importance of this book. It is extremely important. It was also very hard to read. It took me quite a while, even though it's not a big book, because reading the stories of these people where even the people you could not maybe empathize with, because some of them sort of like, it seems like they were looking for it, but others, of course, they weren't. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe they were playing and they were kids. But it doesn't really matter. The point is that every story was sort of heart-wrenching to read. And the reason why I didn't give this book more than 3 stars is because it didn't really work that well for me. I mean, sometimes it was a bit cheesy, which is something that I hate, and that he states, and that some people state that actually he doesn't, that is very sort of objective. I don't think he is that much. I mean, he is objective when it comes to people that maybe could be condemned for using guns themselves and then having that thing, fired back at them. He's not, in that he's very objective, but with like the younger kids here, he does like try to get you emotional somehow, like sharing the poetry that the friend wrote for the kid. I don't know, I just felt like it wasn't necessary for the purpose of the book. But that's just, of course, my own feeling in this regard. And also he did use a lot of quotes like from other books, which, I mean, I can feel like him as a journalist behind this sort of structure, because he doesn't really say, it doesn't really say that much himself. I'm not saying that he doesn't say anything, but most things are just taken from somewhere else. So he would like talk about a book and just he would quote a long like passage of a book, and then you got, of course, a lot of footnotes for that. But yeah, so I felt like I wanted maybe a little bit more of his point of view, I guess, or how he elaborates what he read and what he knows about the subject, other than just quoting like directly, if that makes sense. And also for some, that's not his fault, but for some people that died in here, he had a lot of information, he had access to a lot of information. For others, like barely anything. So I would like read a story and I wasn't even sure that that was explored enough, because then he would like just rant about something else and use the chapter of the person in question to just talk about something else, because he didn't have enough stuff to go on about their lives. So yeah, overall I think it's important, and it's It was, you know, it did make me think, of course, but I didn't read the books that he quotes, but I guess those, I mean, I would redirect you to those books that he talks about, like Ghetto Side and The New Jim Crow. It talks about books that maybe have something else to say that's a bit more. So yeah, these are my thoughts on this book. Finally, I read a book that I gave 4 stars to. I think it's the book that I enjoyed the most. But it's also the first book that I finished, so I feel like it's already fading a little bit from my memory. But it was Educated by Tara Westover. So late to the party here. I purchased this book, I think, when everybody was talking about it, but never got around reading it. And I'm so glad that I did, because I did have sort of high expectations going into it. The premise to me was incredibly interesting already. It's about this woman and how she lived her life sort of secluded from society in a rural town of the US. I don't remember which state, which it's probably embarrassing. Well, Idaho. In Idaho, and her family is Mormon, but her father and also her mother, I guess, mainly is her father that doesn't want them to go to school. Basically, they are preparing for the end of day. They didn't believe in hospitals. They didn't go to hospitals. Actually, the first kids that were born in a hospital, so it's something that sort of grew and changed, and by the time she's the youngest, yes, she's the youngest, so by the time that she was born, they were already living in this sort of isolated way, I would say. It's not that they don't mingle with society at all, but they are quite closed, I would say, to other people and other ideas, just that are different. She didn't even have a birth certificate. They are involved in quite a few car accidents as well, very dangerous car accidents, and they are not treated properly, I would say. Not her brothers, and she explores her past and how she decided to leave and become educated. She ends up graduating in Cambridge. So it's her journey and her discovery and how she slowly detaches herself from the ties that are so strong and so deeply rooted with her family. How hard it was for her, how challenging. She had a tough life, and being able to get up and stand up for herself and just look with a different eye everything that happened to her is just very powerful, and how education is powerful as well. This to me is very important, even though I'm like leaning towards the homeschooling and the school sucks and the school system is horrible, but this sort of balances out this sort of things that I have in mind, you know, what I'm thinking about, and how powerful it is, how knowledge really is powerful. That's very fascinating, and it was just very well written and very interesting. Even though she doesn't write from a long, I mean, she's still very young, so it's not like she reflects. Maybe she didn't have enough time to reflect on everything that happened to her. She's still maybe affected by the events, by her past, of course, although I think that, you know, no matter how much you grow up, you're always affected by your past. So, but still, I feel like this one was a great read, and after that I did watch like some interviews with her. I was just very interested in her in general, and yeah, so I definitely recommend this book. It was a good one. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and of course let me know if you read any of the books that I mentioned, and we'll talk about them in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!